بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing in our lessons and readings of the book معالم في طريق طلب العلم of Sheikh Sadhan. We stopped last week on the sixth obstacle when it comes to seeking Islamic knowledge. And we'll continue from there where the author says, Hafidhullah, Al-Mu'awwiq al-Sabi'u, the seventh preventative or obstacle when it comes to seeking knowledge, Tazkiyatun Nafs, which is self-purification and purifying the nafs, or the lack of it, someone not purifying themselves. And he says, وَتَزْكِيَةُ النَّفْسِ أَنْ يُحِبُّ الشَّخْص مَدْحْ نَفْسِهِ. Afwan, تَزْكِيَةُ النَّفْسِ, afwan. He's not here, he's talking about praising oneself, sorry. So praising oneself. وَتَزْكِيَةُ النَّفْسِ, he says here, praising oneself, أَنْ يُحِبُّ الشَّخْص مدح نفسه وأن يضيف على نفسه ألقابا وأن يفرح باستماع ثناء الناس عليه. Self-praise is for a person to be loving that he is praised and that he is given, or he gives himself honorific titles, and he hears the people saying good things about him. ولا شك, he says, أن ثناء الناس عليك من عاجل بشراك. And there's no doubt that somebody being praised by the people is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give as a glad tiding immediately for a person. It comes in the hadith Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, where a man said to Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, رَجُلٌ يَعْمَلُ عَمَلًا فَيَرَاهُ النَّاسُ فَيَحْمَدُونَهُ. He sees a man does a good deed and he sees people praising him for it. فَقَالَ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ تِلْكَ عَاجِلْ بُشْرَى الْمُؤْمِنِ. That is the glad tidings that has been hastened for the believer. Hadith Muslim. He says, لكن الحذر كل حذر أن تمدح بأمر ليس فيك وتفرح بذلك. So this hadith shows that if somebody praises you without you asking for it, with something that you have, good qualities, that's a glad tidings Allah has given to you as in the dunya for the good that you are upon. And it's almost like an encouragement to continue upon the khair. Not that you are pleased necessarily with the praise, but the fact that what you're doing is praiseworthy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hopefully is pleased with you. But then he says, be wary though, the Shaykh says, of praising yourself with qualities you don't have. And this is the part where people, they get out of hand and what they really want. They want people to call them titles, give them names or honorific status that they don't have it. And it comes in the hadith of Asma, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, المتشبع بما لم يعطى كلابس ثوب زور. Whosoever pretends to have that which they don't have, or that which is not given, is like one who wears two garments of falsehood. Hadith Bukhari. And the ulama uses hadith to show someone pretends to know something they don't know. For example, someone pretends to be a scholar or an expert in hadith and he doesn't know much. Or a faqih, a jurist, and he's not a faqih, he's not a jurist. Or a shaykh, and he's not a shaykh, he knows that. But he wants the people to say that he is and praise him for it. And we already took last week the hadith of Abu Hurairah, radiallahu ta'ala, the first people to be thrown in the hellfire is the person who studied knowledge, taught it, learned the Quran. For what purpose? Abdul call him Al-Qari, a reader, recited the Quran. He says, فَحِضَارِ حَضَارِ أن يكون هذا من شأني وشأنك وتذكر قول الله تعالى في ذم قوم ويحبون أن يحمدوا بما لم يفعلوا. He says, beware. This is your situation. And remember the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticizing the people ويحبون أن يحمدوا بما لم يفعلوا. That these people, the non-Muslims, Allah is criticizing, they love to be praised for that which they don't do. ثم تذكر, he says, then be mindful. And the تزكية النفس في الغالب مذمومة. Praising oneself in reality in most cases is blameworthy إلا في بعض مواطن بضوابط شرعية, except in some situations with certain Islamic legislated guidelines. يقول ربنا عز وجل فلا تزكوا أنفسكم. Don't praise yourself, Allah says, هو أعلم بمن اتقى. Allah knows best who's pious. وقال الله تعالى ألم تر للذين يزكون أنفسهم. Have you not seen those who praise themselves بِاللَّهُ يُزَكِّي مَن يَشَاءُ. Rather, it's Allah who praises whom He wills. مَن يَشَاءُ وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ فَتِيلًا. He doesn't oppress anyone to the slightest. And also the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا تزكوا أنفسكم لا تزكوا أنفسكم الله أعلم بأهل البر منكم. Don't praise oneself or yourselves. Allah knows best those who are pious amongst you. And so for the student of knowledge then, and this is the reminder, that if you're doing good in your studies or you're trying your best, then leave that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The praise of the people is not important to you. But if the people of knowledge praise you and the people of khair, then inshallah ta'ala it's a good sign. But we have to be careful between getting praise and seeking it. There's a difference. So here he's saying this is a preventative for many people, because if you're seeking praise, then you do what will get you praise. Or we'll talk about that which you think will get you praise. And ultimately you end up being dispraised. And that's the problem. People who seek praise, they end up dispraised. Because you're going to say things you shouldn't be saying, and people are going to find out you're ignorant, and they're going to criticize you. So then he continues, says, نعم يحق الإنسان كما سلف أن يزكي نفسه في المواضع. But it should be known, it's okay at times to praise yourself if there's a need. As Yusuf alayhi salam, he says in the Quran, in the story of Surah Yusuf, اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حفيظ عليم. He says, place me as the one who is the minister of the agriculture on the earth. Verily I am حفيظ عليم. I'm trustworthy or protective, and I'm knowledgeable. Like in the Ghalib, the Shaykh says, like in most cases, حب تزكية, loving to be praised, وحب الثناء, loving to be mentioned good, من مداخل الشيطان على العباد. It's a pathway of shaitan into the person and into their intentions. فالحذر أن تكون ممن يفرح ويدخله عجب إذ زكية بل يحرص على أن يسمع تلك التزكيات. He says, and be wary then, you're a person who loves that he be mentioned and be praised, and that you're eager in that this is the case. وإذا أردت أن تعرف خطر حب التزكية فانظر إلى تقصيرك في طاعة. If you want to get rid of this bad quality, then take a look at your shortcomings when it comes to the acts of obedience. ثم انظر إلى ذلك الذي زكاك. Then take a look at what people praise you for. أيا ترى لو كان يعلم عنك ما خفي عنه وما تعمل من الأعمال التي لا ترضى الله عز وجل. Don't you see then, and isn't clear to you that which is hidden from you from the mistakes, and that which people praise you for, or that which Allah knows you about you, and that which is not praiseworthy from your actions. لو أنها خرجت لهذا الرجل, if this came out to people who was praising you, أتراه يثني عليك, would he really praise you? So here's the balance the Shaykh is giving us to cure. If you think, for example, you have this problem, then just remember any shortcoming you have and deficiencies, if the people who praised you knew it, they wouldn't praise you. So what should you be? Focus on those bad qualities, get rid of them. But if someone gets caught up with people's praises and he hides something worse or bad behavior, then at the end of the day, it's not going to benefit him. And like we said, it usually ends up in a bad place. So he says, the shahid min hada, the summary of this topic, أن يحذر الإنسان من تزكية نفسه ويحذر الإنسان من أن يفضي يعني نفسه ألقابا ليست له لأن من تعجل شيئا قبل أوانه عوقب بحرمانه. He says, and we should be wary, a person should be wary of praising himself, and he should be wary of giving himself titles that he doesn't have. And he remembers the maxim, whoever hastens to that which whoever hastens to something before his due time will be punished by being deprived of it. And this is what we said, if somebody tries to become a sheikh before he's at that status, he will end up no sheikh. Right? And also we know the awam, their praise is not based on anything meaningful, right? Imam Zahabi said the jahil doesn't know his own level. How does he know the level then of someone else? So if someone's ignorant says you're a sheikh, you know he's ignorant, his statements are based on some other things. Maybe your qamis looks nice, or you have a longer beard than his. So this is what he's judging on. He's not judging on any criteria that he can actually measure. Not to mention most of the awam, as Imam Suyuti mentioned in Mirjawzi, they consider the alim the one that gives the khutbah. So khalas, if that's the standard, you give the khutbah, everyone thinks you're alim. And it's already happened. The people on the khutbah, they gave the khutbah, then after the people come for Q&A, then things went the wrong way, right? Because they didn't know that the khatib could be anybody. Sometimes the khatib is substitute for lack of khatibs, but they don't know this. So that we have to be careful of that. And compare this to the tazkiyah of alim, a sheikh who praises you for the knowledge you have and the good that you have with you, that has weight. But at the same time, we know the tazkiyah that we're talking about here is of yourself, not the people who are deserving to give you praise. When it leads to the next one, al-mu'awwiq al-thamin, the eighth one, عدم العمل بعلم, a person not acting upon the knowledge that they have. And he says, عدم العمل بعلم, not acting upon the knowledge that you know, سبب من أسباب محق البركة العلم. It's one of the causes to lead to you losing the barakah, the blessings of ilm, ومن أسباب قيام الحجة على صاحب العلم. It's also a cause for knowledge to be, or the proof to be established against you. وَلَقَدْ ذَمَّ اللَّهُ مَنْ كَانَ هَذَا شَأْنُهُ. Allah has criticized those who this is their situation when He says, كَبُرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. How severe is it and hated in the sight of Allah that you say that which you don't do. Surah Saf. And so here we can see the Shaykh's talking about people who don't act upon the knowledge, and we know that that's the purpose behind the ilm. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Those who believed and they act. العلم ثم عمل. But the problem obviously is, the more we learn, we're supposed to grow in that knowledge. The difficulty obviously is the acting on the knowledge. The more you learn it, the challenge. But he says, فَعَدَمُ الْعَمِلِ بِعِلْمٍ سَبْمُ الرَّئِيسِ مِنْ أَسْبَابِ مَحْقِ الْبَرَكَةِ الْعِلْمِ. That is actually the chief reason, the primary reason for the barakah of knowledge to be taken. وَلِذَلِكَ كَانَ السَّلَفْ أَحْرَصَ النَّاسِ عَلَى الْعَمَلِ بِمَا يَعْمَلُونَ. The Salaf Salih, the pious predecessors, they were the most eager people to act upon the knowledge that they had. There is an illustrious Sahabi Jalil, Ibn Mas'ud رضي الله عنه يقول كان رجل منا يتعلم 10 آيات لم يجاوزهن حتى يعرف معانيهن والعمل بهن. He says that a person amongst us, the Sahaba, will not learn more than 10 verses at a time of the Quran. The reason being that he will learn first their meanings and then act upon it. And this is how the Sahaba used to practice knowledge and learn it and practice it. And this was mentioned by Ibn Qadir and others in their tafsir. And this shows you the importance of acting. So if someone has a lot of knowledge and less actions, it's not something good. But the Shaykh says here, Ali says also, رضي الله عنه, that يهتف العلم بعمل فإن أجابه وإلا ارتحل. That knowledge calls out to action if it answers good, otherwise it disappears. لأن العلم والعمل قرينان. For knowledge and actions are two closely related friends or associates. إما يجتمعا أو يرتفعا معا. Either they come together or they disappear together. وإن كان هناك علم بلا عمل فإنه حجة على صاحبه. And then he says that if there is knowledge without action, then this will be a proof against the person. Means much of the knowledge, علم نافع, beneficial knowledge, is ilm that you can act upon. And some of the knowledge we know is not necessarily to be acted upon. It's knowledge that it can be made more theoretical, but the beneficial knowledge, which most of Sharia, is acted upon. So that's why we know if somebody is studying the wudu, the salah, the Quran, other things, when he learns something, he immediately puts into practice, even if it's just one time. But he should make it a habit that he's practicing something all the time, all the things that are required from him, from the wajibat, mustahabbat, etc., to the best of his ability. And if you go to the biographies of the pious predecessors, this was their way. Any hadith they had, they tried to practice it one time at least. So that's something we should also aspire to, because we live in an era, from the end of times, where knowledge, speech will be much and action will be little. That's a sign of the end of times. A lot of talk and less action. As they say, people talk to talk, they don't walk to walk. This is one of the signs of the end of times. So we should try our best to measure ourselves against the Salaf and not against other people. Because if you judge yourself based on others, it's not going to give you good criteria. Rather, what the Salaf Salih used to do, we compare ourselves to them, and then you realize how much we have to do. And we know that hadith, Al-Quran hujjatak aw alayk. The Quran is a proof for you or against you. So if someone learns the Quran and he memorizes it and he recites it well, but then he's violating its ahkam, its rulings, then in reality that person is in big trouble. وبشر الحافي رحمه الله said, أدوا زكاة الحديث فاستعملوا من كل 100 حديث 5 أحاديث. Bishr al-Hafi said, give the zakat of the hadith. And he said, what is it? Use, for every 200 hadith, 100 hadith, you use or act upon at least 5 of it. And what he's talking about is not the things that are wajib, he's talking about the things that you learn that are from the hadith, and especially things that which are recommended or the Rasul did it, the Sahaba. And the greatest story being Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, when he learned the Rasul paid the kapar, when he did hijab for him, Imam Ahmad, he paid him likewise in order to act upon that hadith. And this shows you again the eagerness that they had. He said in the Shaykh, وَالْعَمَلُ بِعِلْمِ يُعِينُ عَلَى تَثْبِيتِ الْعِلْمِ. And this is now the benefit, that acting upon knowledge allows you to make your knowledge firm. If you have a problem memorizing things, act upon it. And now they found in psychology, this associative memory. You memorize something, and if you do it, it's a second level. So with actions and mind. So now the knowledge becomes stronger. Versus someone memorized something, and then he didn't back practice it. Right? So that's why you find Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he teaches people how to make wudu. He teaches them verbally and shows them. Salah, he showed them in the minbar. And he talked about how Sallu kama ra'aytum nusalli. He taught them and he showed them. So when you learn how he prayed, physically you see it. At the same time he told you, it becomes easy to you to remember. That's why the hadith, the Sahaba, after you wonder how come they memorize so much hadith, easy to practice all of them. They used to live by it. So they remember it. And that's why when they remember to the hadith, an incident will come with it. Whereas us, sometimes we memorize something and we didn't practice it, so we forgot it together. You try your best to practice what you learn, and you find it easier to remember. He says, وَإِذَا أَرَدْتَ شَاهِدًا عَلَى ذَلِكَ فَانْظُرْ إِلَى أَذْكَارِ الْيَوْمِ وَاللَّيْلِ. You want to see example, the Shaykh says, take a look at the morning, daily, and evening adhkar. Morning and evening adhkar. وأذكار الصباح والمساء والنوم والدخول والخروج من الخلاء والمنزل إلى آخره. All those du'as, we know them. Why? Because every time you're coming in, the masjid, you have one, you come out, you one, washroom one. So most of us memorize it like that, just by the moment of doing it, when it's time to do it. And also we can see then the Shaykh said, لو أن الإنسان أراد حفظها فإنه سوف يحفظها لكن سوف ينساها بعد حين. If you just try to memorize it straight without practicing it, you will forget it just as fast as you memorized it. لكن لو أنه عمل بها حينا من دهره. If you act upon a long time in your life, فإنها تبقى راسخة وبقدر عملي بها تزداد رسوخا. And in accordance to how much you act upon it, the strength of your memory. So that's now a secret that we see that goes back to memorization. Today they found out that that's actually one of the best ways to memorize it. Knowledge or anything you try to memorize is expanding the way you're memorizing it. So with your tongue you read out loud, and with your ears you hear it, and your heart you memorize it, and your bodies you act on it. So all those levels becomes hard to forget something. But what happens now, the Salaf Salih, they were doing a lot of that, where we're just doing the theoretical or using our ears and eyes, and we forget more. So we have to benefit from this strategy. قال الذهبي رحمه الله عن زمني. Imam Dhahabi talked about his time period. وأما اليوم, he said, as for today, فما بقي من علوم قليلة إلا قليل في أناس قليل ما قل من يعمل منهم بذلك القليل فحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. Imam Dhahabi says in today's time, again he lives in the 8th century, time of Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he says what is left of knowledge is very little amongst the most little of people, and from those even less are those who act upon the little knowledge they even have. May Allah and our right, Hasbunallah, sufficient for us as Allah as a wakil. And this is not something only in his time period, rather it was also something that the earlier scholars that complained about, like Imam ibn Jawzi, Hafid ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah, and Sayyid al-Khatir. He also complained at his time that people were seeking knowledge of the ulama for other reasons, and much of it they're not practicing it. And this is just a reality that comes with people. So he says, فإذا كان هذا كلام ذهبي في قرن الثامن الحجري. This is Dhahabi talking about the 8th century Hijri. فما بالك بحالنا اليوم? What do you think about today? فإلزام, he said, فإلزام على كل واحد أن يحسن ظن بربه. Everyone should have good thoughts of their Lord. وأن يجاهد نفسه, and he should strive against himself. والله تعالى لطيف بعباده يرزق من يشاء وهو القوي العزيز. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is لطيف بعباده, all subtle and kind with his servants. He provides for them of whomsoever he wills, and he is all strong and all powerful. Then he says, أخي القاري, O my reader, إن هذا العلم الذي أعطانا الله إياه, that Allah has given us, يحتاج إلى الزكاة. It requires zakat. Zakat just means something you give out. So now everything has zakat. He says, فَزَكَاةُ الْمَالِ رُبُعُ عُشْرٍ. Zakat of money, when it comes to your money, is 2.5%. وَزَكَاةُ الْعِلْمِ أَن تَعْمَلَ بِهِ وَأَن تُعَلِّمُهُ. That you act upon it and you teach it. And that's very important for all of us who are studying zakatul ilm. Someone wants to get more knowledge, you have to give the zakat. Because Allah, you be sadaqat, right? Allah, He grows your sadaqat, right? The more you give, the more you get. But some people, they learn a lot, they don't teach nobody. Then they complain later, they forgot. Yeah, because you didn't give no zakat. You were stingy. And so when it comes to ilm, if you learn even one thing, you share it. But first you practice, and you give it to others to share with them. And that person who's doing that, Allah will allow him to have barakah. Because the Shaykh said, the lack of barakah comes from not practicing. So how do you get barakah? Zakatul ilm. Give it. So for example, let's say that you learn something, you practice it yourself, you just teach somebody else. And we know when you give zakat of your money, what happens to your money? It grows, right? What happens with your knowledge? It grows. But when you don't act upon it, you're just stingy. No zakat, no nothing. And that's why the ulama, they teach a lot. They teach a lot because it gives barakah in their own knowledge. You see, brothers and sisters, the benefit is barakah. It's not about how much you have, it's what you can do with what you have. Because if somebody says, I want to become very knowledgeable, that doesn't mean you're going to have the great impact in society. And now he says, Shaykh Islam Abdul Wahhab says, "I'lam, no, rahimakallah, may Allah mercy upon you. أنه يجب على كل مسلم ومسلمة." It's upon every Muslim, male and female. تعلم أربع مسائل, to know four things. الأولى العلم, first is knowledge. الثاني عمل, then acting upon it, عمل به. الثالث, thirdly, الدعوة إليه, calling people towards it. والرابع صبر على الأذى فيه, being patient upon the harm that comes your way. And most of us, we know this ثلاثة usul, or surah ثلاثة. Here we can see that order. That's how the student knowledge should be. علم, عمل, دعوة, صبر. But if you look carefully, if somebody starts with ilm, they didn't go to the next step, amal. Then what do you think about the third one, da'wah? It's probably not going there either. And this is one of the problems that we have today, when we have to be mindful of it. Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen mentioned in his book on Qawaid, Fiqh, Usul Fiqh, that talib ilm, what's his goal? Al-ilm, the study, the amal, practice it, then da'wah, to teach it, or to call people towards it. وَالدِّفَاعُ الدِّينِ, and to defend the deen. That's your goal, student knowledge. You're not sitting here just to memorize all these books and put it up. You got to go out and teach people and to defend against the people of misguidance. The Brother Abdul was talking about all the people bid'ah and people out there, kuffar, who have doubts, all these nonsense. Who's going to defend it except the people of knowledge? But you see how if your first stage is knowledge, action, once you get good at that, you're progressing to the next stages. But imagine someone who starts with ilm and no amal. Then no wonder then you find that person, he's not doing anything really. He's not really doing. It's sad to say this, but this is why it's dangerous if someone doesn't realize they're together. The strategy that's supposed to come: ilm, amal, da'wah, sabr, and then difa'u din, defending the religion against the people who have doubts. So then he says, فَبِقَدْرِ, this is the key now. فَبِقَدْرِ مَا تُزَكِّي هَذَا الْعِلْمِ يُؤْتِيكَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ خَيْرًا لَا تَتَوَقَّعُ. In accordance to the amount of zakat of knowledge you give to others, i.e. how much you give to others of knowledge, and how much you practice it yourself, Allah will give you of goodness that you can't even imagine, expect. لا تتوقع عليك. كما قال الله عز وجل ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا. Whoever fears Allah, Allah make a way out for him. And this is a benefit as well, that the increase in knowledge, you practice it and you give that zakat. And so our job would be then to make sure that we're not learning and then the knowledge is getting into us, get us into trouble. Now he moves on to the next one. المعوق تاسع, the ninth obstacle. اليأس واحتقار الذات. Someone having disparity and self-loathing or low self-esteem about oneself. He says, يا طالب علم, most student knowledge, أنت والشيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية والبخاري وابن حجر والعلماء نشترك في قول الله تعالى والله أخرجكم من بطون أمهاتكم لا تعلمون شيئا وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة لعلكم تشكرون. He says, me, you, Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Imam Bukhari, Imam Ibn Hajar, and all ulama are all included in the statement of Allah, and Allah brought you out the wombs of your mothers not knowing a thing, and He gave you hearing and sight and hearts that you may become grateful. So Shaykh is trying to tell us that the difference between them and us is not the fact that we're born scholars. Ibn Mas'ud, he says, no, لا يولد أحد العالم. No one's born a scholar. إنما العلم بتعلم. Knowledge is by learning. So we have to start here, because someone may say then that these scholars, they were gifted. Allah, it's true. Allah gave them a lot of benefits, but the key here is what? He continues, كلنا ذلك الرجل. هذه الآية قاسم مشترك للناس جميعا الأنبياء والرسل استفاهم الله عز وجل والصحابة لهم فضل وقصب السبق في الخيرات. He says all of us are men. Allah in this ayah shows all of us are in the same category. The prophets, the messengers who Allah chose, the Sahaba who have come forward in the deen. في هذه الآية تجمعنا جميعا. Allah, this verse covers all of us. Means everybody comes out being born ignorant, and then they learn knowledge through effort and also the bounty of Allah. So now he's saying to the student, وَلِذَا لَا تَحْقِرَنَّ مِنَ الْمَعْرُوفِ شَيْئًا وَلَا تَحْقِرَنَّ نَفْسَكَ. So he says, therefore don't belittle any of good and don't belittle yourselves. وفي الوقت نفسه كما سبق لا تزكي نفسك. At the same time, don't also praise yourself over, right? So we have the balance. Don't belittle yourself, no praise yourself. Be in the middle. And he says here, أنت تعلم أنك لست أهلا لها ولا تلبس نفسك ثوبا أوسع منك. And don't praise yourself to the point that you are praising yourself with that which you're not qualified to have, and don't wear a qamis too big for you, right? فإن اليأس وعدم الثقة بالنفس سبب عظيم من أسباب عدم تحصيلي. He says having disparity when it comes to seeking knowledge and low self-esteem is one of the great causes for the inability to learn. And this is a problem as well. That one extreme is self-praise, another extreme is someone says, I can never learn anything. And this is having bad thoughts of Allah. وَمَا كَانَ عَطَاءُ رَبِّكَ مَحْظُورًا. Allah's bounty is unlimited. So what do we know? That if we actually work hard and make lots of dua, Allah can make you a mujaddid, a reviver of the deen. Why not? And this is why sometimes you might see some people, the way they see themselves and the way what they're doing, it is an indication they're not trying to do much. Because he doesn't think much of himself. Like we said, you have a balance, a healthy balance. You're not praising yourself, at the same time, you don't think yourself incapable. No subject is too hard, Allah's tawfiq, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Above everyone's knowledge, the one more knowledgeable. So if something's hard, Allah will make it easy. But imagine you say, there's no point, it's too difficult, who can study this? This is not also befitting. But imagine you tell yourself, who am I? I can't do anything. Then what the point is, we don't live a life like that. But if this is a problem, he says, وَالْإِنسَانُ إِذَا رَأَى مَا أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ. If someone really looks at what Allah has given him, من سلامة الجوارح, from the good, healthy body and limbs, ومن توفير الوسائل, and Allah has given you all the means, التي يحتاجها طالب علم, which you really need as a student knowledge, يجد أن حجة الله عليه قائمة. Allah's proof has always been established. In today's time, many ulama debated, is today's time easier to become mujtahid than before? And some ulama say yes. Like Alamat al-Shinqiti in Adwa al-Bayan, they say today's time is the quickest time to become mujtahid in the history of Islam, because all the ulum al-shar'iyya with us, we have it, all the books, the past, the present in front of us. Whether with technology, bab al-awla. Imagine mujtahid, we're not talking about just basic talib ilm, you can become that level, it's possible. But some people think themselves, khalas, they're never going to become any talib ilm. What does that mean then? Ilm is that hard? لَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِذِكْرِ. Allah made the Quran easy to memorize. And some might say, how can I memorize it? What does this mean? It means you don't know tariq, that's it. You're not working hard enough. Otherwise, it's not that hard. It's not supposed to be. Allah made it easy. One of the maqasid of Sharia is taysir. In the hadith, yusr, right? The religion is easy. But imagine someone say, talab ilm, the whole of it's too difficult. Ya akhi, what are you studying? That's going to become so difficult. And some people, you find them that. They just put themselves, they put the ceiling low. That's incorrect. That's putting down yourself. You're not supposed to humiliate yourself. And if we look from the past, the difference between us and them, the Shaykh's showing, the hard work, the ambition, the ikhlas. But really, those ingredients we know. So what we have to do, we have to do what they did. We have to do what they did and use our effort, but most important, dua. So therefore, it says, لا تحقر نفسك إن كنت ضعيفا في حفظ. Don't belittle yourself if you're weak in حفظ. أو ضعيف الفهم, or you're weak in understanding, أو بطيء القراءة, or you're reading slow, أو سريع النسيان, or you forget a lot. كل هذه أدواء وأسقام تزول إذا صدقت النية. إذا صدقت النية. All of these diseases or problems will get away from you if you have a good niyyah. And go to the Sahaba and Salaf. Abu Hurairah had a problem with memorization initially. So what did he do? He asked Rasulullah to make dua for him, he never forgot anything. Another Sahabi same, I believe it's Uthman ibn Abi As, he told Rasulullah, I can't memorize anything. Then we sent the ruqyah for him, khalas, he cleared his hifz. Some of us, I think we need the ruqyah, that's maybe for us. Imagine, he said, Rasulullah, I can't memorize anything. So the Nabi said, ukhruj ya aduwallah. And he got out of him and he started hifz. Well, we joke around with this, not just for the kids, some adults too, they need it. But imagine, that could be it. Some of us, maybe we don't even know how to hifz. That's another problem. You don't know how to. Shaykh has a book, Istihan. كيف يقرأ. He has a book, Shaykh Istihan. كيف تقرأ, how to read. وكيف تكتب, how to write. And كيف تحفظ, how to memorize. There's a book he has, the Shaykh. You can read it. It's PDF. He tells you all the paths. And I'm saying this because everything is written today. So one example, if you're weak in hifz, what do? More repetition. Some might say, khalas, I'm weak in hifz. Who was born with the best memory? Only a few of us. So the difference between you and the best hafid is you do it 100 times, he does it 1 time. So a good hafid, a good memorizer, maybe a few times you read something, memorize it, you just 100 times. And it's important to know that tikrar is a secret. So in hifd, the secret is how many times do you multiply your repetition. Right? قلل المقدار, make your amount you're memorizing small, وأكثر التكرار, and increase your repetition. 20, 30, 40, 50. Try yourself. Who can memorize it? Fatiha. Do you find anyone misses Fatiha? Anyone forgot it until the day they died? Why? How come no one forgot Fatiha? How many times you read it per day? 17 times. Your whole life, no one forgets Fatiha. Even the person who left Islam, he still knows Fatiha. So someone today says, okay, that's a secret. 17 times a day. How about if I did any hadith that many times? You see, brothers, sometimes what happens, you're criticizing yourself, is just your method. You just don't know yet. So this is a beautiful reminder that we can become great memorizers. We can. And we can become great students if we try our best, but also ask Allah. Now a story says, Imam al-Askari, rahimahullah, Abu Hilal al-Askari, one of the famous grammarians and lughawiyun, right, Arabic specialist. He tells a story of himself. He says, كان حفظ يتعذر علي حين ابتدأت الأرومة عفوا. He said, I remember he was very weak or unable to memorize a poem which I was trying to read from the classical poems. This was a story that he narrates himself in his book حث على طلب علم واجتهاد. So he says then what happened was, when I was trying to read this, it became difficult for me. So he said then I went to the depths of the dark room and I stayed there one night and I closed the door and I stayed there and I memorized about 200 abiyat, yani verses of it. And there's no doubt, he said it came from a lot of repetition and effort. And he says this is how he was able to memorize it. When he found it difficult, he just pushed himself more until he was able to finish it. And so imagine, it stayed one night in an empty room, dark, and he just kept going until I finished 200 of them. And this is just the effort that some of the Salaf did, just poetry alone. Right? Imagine. So he says, imagine. There's others like this too, they did this. Some of the Salaf, they memorized because someone challenged them. I believe one of the Salaf, they told him, you can't memorize the Quran, you're too weak. So he said, I went in my house 3 days, I came back, I finished. Imagine that today, brother. Someone told you that, you can't do it. So yeah, let me show you. Sometimes that's how we are, that we need that. But see, that's okay when it comes to ilm. But what happens today, someone says you can't do it, you say, you're right, I can't do it. Astaghfirullah azim. This is not the behavior of talib ilm. Someone says you can't do it, so I'll show you. That's what you're supposed to do. For dunya, we do it. With deen, you say, no, you're right, I can't do it. So what happens here, the Salaf Salih, they pushed themselves, and this shows us what? That if someone works hard, they can do it. But even some of them, they learned language, Arabic grammar, other subjects were difficult to the effort. Here's another story he mentions from one of the people in the past, again, same book, حث على طلب علم, of Abu Hilal Askari. He says that there was a man, a young story mentioned from somebody, a young man from one of the villages whose eloquence was fantastic, despite his people had some difficulty in pronouncing or speaking Arabic. So I was amazed by him, so I was asked, how do you do it? He said, every day I would take 50 pages of Jahid, his book, right? And then he said, I would raise my voice reading it, and after a short time I reached the level of eloquence you find today. 50 pages per day reading out loud, imagine. And then he becomes this eloquent person. This is all to show us what? That when things become difficult, you just increase the effort. That's the secret. That's actually the benefit that we take from this. Not to mention, of course, the dua that you have to be making, asking Allah. But the Shaykh mentioned the point already, if your niyyah is sincere. Okay, if your niyyah is sincere, that's key too. Because the person's intention is not sincere, once he's told you have to do so much effort, he's going to just give up. How much I have to do? Too much. It's too much for me. I'm going to stop. So here, brothers and sisters, we can see a benefit that we have to take advantage of these works that ulama have written and strategies that they mentioned to us to take advantage of it. And we should have good thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and good thoughts of the capacity that we can reach if we work hard. He says, after he mentions the story, he says, إِذَنْ فَلَا تَحْقِرَنَّ نَفْسَكَ وَعَلَيْكَ بِالْمُجَاهَدَةِ. Don't belittle yourself and work hard. وَرَحِمُ اللَّهُ الْبُخَارِ رحمه Allah. May Allah have mercy on Bukhari. When it was said to him, مَا دَوَاءُ النِّسْيَانِ. What's the cure for forgetfulness? He said, مُدَاوَمَةُ النَّظَرِ فِي الْكُتُبِ. Continuously looking at the books. And that's the secret. If someone can't memorize well, you just keep reading a book again and again and keep looking at it till you memorize either its wordings or its meaning. And that's another thing, right? If you can't you can perfectly but see how Imam Bukhari is mentioning this. This is a secret. وَلَا شَكَّ إِنْ تَرَكَ مَعَاصِي. Likewise, there's no doubt, leaving off disobedience and sins مِنْ أَعْظَمِ الْأَسْبَابِ الَّتِي تُعِينُ عَلَى الْحِفْظِ. Also, this is the greatest means to help you memorization. وَالشَّافِعِ رحمه الله يقول كاملا كلاما عبد جميلا شكوت الوكيع سوء حفظي فأرشدني أن ترك المعاصي وقال اعلم أن العلم نورا ونور الله لا يؤتاه عاصي. And so this is attributed to Imam Shafi'i that he read the lines of poetry that I complained to Waqi' ibn Jarrah about my poor memory. So he directed me to leave off disobedience to Allah. And he said, no, the knowledge, the light of Allah, the light of Allah is not put into the heart of one who's disobedient. Again, this is a very famous lines attributed to Imam Shafi'i. And the point is, right, the meaning is there, right, that you have to also take that as well. So you take the means which are physical, tangible, like repetition, getting up early, coming to class on time, asking, and also lots of dua, stay away from the sins, etc. It's a balance. But a student should be having those good thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and of himself. Because it's possible a person can reach the level of a serious student knowledge or shaykh if he works hard, but also if Allah gives him tawfiq. Some of the imams, like the shaykh I didn't mention here, but Hafiz ibn Hajj rahimahullah, when he went for Hajj, he drank the Zamzam water, making dua to Allah, they gave him the hifz, better than that Imam Zahabi, and they came back to 20 years later, and I surpassed them in memorization. Again, imagine, someone may say to yourself, Imam Zahabi, khalas, who could reach Zahabi? Well, Hafiz ibn Hajj is after, right? Many decades after, he surpassed him, he said hifz. And it's not only one of the Salaf who did that. He used Zamzam water. As today, Zamzam water comes in the liters. Someone's going to Hajj all the Umrah all the time. Khalas, akhi, you take that, you make dua, and after that you get to work. It's not just when we drink the Zamzam and sit down. It doesn't work like that with us. You have to make dua, and then you have to get to work. But also sometimes it's the laziness, right? And this is another thing that it comes as well, the laziness, that someone doesn't have the hard work that's required from them. And this is a point I want to mention, just two more points. That also we notice sometimes the people, their low ambitions is what captures them, that their ambitions are not very high. So because of that, what they're attempting to do is very low, so they achieve it quickly and then they just stop. Ibn al-Qayyim writes in Kitab Miftah Dar al-Sa'ada, من طلب العلم ليحيي به الإسلام, whomsoever seeks knowledge in order to revive al-Islam, فهو من الصديقين. He's from those who are the truthful ones. Allah mentions in the Quran, وَدَرَجَتُهُ بَعْدَ دَرَجَةِ النَّبُوَّةِ, and his station is only one less degree of a prophet. Allahu Akbar. That statement, brothers, look at that. مَنْ طَلَبَ الْعِلْمِ, مَنْ طَلَبَ الْعِلْمِ, whoever seeks knowledge, لِيُحْيِي بِهِ الْإِسْلَامِ, in order to revive Islam. That's what we're trying to do in today's time. So much ignorance, so little people they know about the way of the Salaf. So our job, we learn and we to revive it. فهو من الصديقين, it says, if you're seeking knowledge in order to revive به الإسلام, ليحيي به الإسلام, فهو من الصديقين, a person is considered from those who are صديقين. وَدَرَجَتُهُ, and his level, بعد درجة النبوة, is just one degree underneath the level of the prophets. There's no better encouragement for someone than this. And that they try their best, they work hard and have good ambitions. Because himmatul aliyah will also raise your low sense of self. Not to mention that if you have good efforts, and you have a high ambition, your efforts, inshallah ta'ala, will bring fruits. And they will encourage you. So for example, if someone memorizes the Quran and parts of it, or any method he's doing or whatever, or you understand something, it encourages you to keep going. Because you're progressing. So that's why you start off a little. The ulama mentioned another secret, it's going to come later, adab, you start with the easy stuff. Why? Because you're encouraging yourself, you're making habits and tracking yourself. So you don't do like a whole page, half page, couple of lines, whatever is easier. علموا ويسروا, teach and make it easy. So what happens in Hafiz Hajj explains Fath al-Bari in Hadin Yusr. When يشاهد أحد الغرابة, he mentioned this hadith that if someone starts off something small and easy, it becomes enjoyable. For example, you're doing hifz, just like a few lines, that's it, and you go to sleep after. MashaAllah, you feel so good, I did 3 lines. And that's it, you don't pass it. Sometimes masail ilmiya, you're studying a subject, fiqh, any subject, hadith, whatever, 1 mas'ala per day, just 1. Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, we mentioned before, he became a faqih 3 mas'alas per day. Just 3. We do the math, but 3 is 360. 3 mas'alas a day, that's mastered it, and he became faqih from the 4 madhabs, one of the biggest of madhabs today, it's the biggest madhab. And sometimes when we tell ourselves, we're going to go either 0 or 100, right? Sometimes you're in the mode, I want to learn everything, other days I don't want nothing. So we have to remind ourselves, Lamiyya Wardi, it's a great poem someone should return to from time to time to encourage them. اطلب العلم ولا تكسل فما أبعد الخير على أهل الكسل. He says, seek the knowledge, don't be lazy. How far is good from those who are lazy? وهجر النوم وحصله فمن يعرف المطلوب يحقر ما بدل. And he says, and abandon sleep and make effort in what you're obtaining, and whoever knows, right? Whoever knows, يعرف المطلوب, with the level and the degree, the value of that which he's seeking, يحقر ما بدل. He will belittle whatever it has to do to reach it. Sometimes someone might say, the masjid is so far. يا أخي طلب علم. One Shaykh in Saudi, he mentioned, is a talib ilm who studies with him, he takes a plane every day to Riyadh to study knowledge. Every day. From Jeddah to Riyadh, the night time, because he works in the day and they won't let him off the job. So what did he do? He finishes work, cuts a ticket, flies to Riyadh, does his darasa, flies back, he goes back to work every day. He said, we've never seen that before. That was before we have the horses, the first guy doing the plane. And some of us say the 401 is jammed. Yeah, Shaykh, la hawla quwwata billah. You have to have embarrassment sometimes. Of course, it's always going to be jammed. Doesn't matter. واحتفل للفقه في الدين ولا تشتغل عنه بمال أو خول. He says, busy yourselves in fiqh, understand this religion, and don't busy yourself with money and those low friends and those who are lowly people. لا تقل قد ذهبت أربابه. Don't say the people who are people of knowledge have already passed and gone. كل من سار على الدرب وصل. Everyone takes the path he's going to achieve and he's going to reach his goal. So this is the encouragement, brothers. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll end with this much. بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.